Mental health is a state of well-being that enables people to cope with life's stresses, realize their potential, learn and work effectively. Menstruation, on the other hand, is vital to human reproduction and the human population. Yet rarely do we connect the two, mental health and menstrual health. Since 1949, May, the month of May, has been Mental Health Awareness Month in the US. And May 28th is recognized globally as Menstrual Hygiene Day. Still, few recognize how profoundly menstruation impacts mental well-being at home and in the workplace. Fewer still are willing to talk about it. According to Plan International UK's Break the Barriers report, over 40% of menstruators said they couldn't speak to anyone, not even doctors, about how their period affected their mental health. In Uganda, studies have found strong links between poor menstrual health and mental distress among adolescent girls. In Enugu, Nigeria, schoolgirls reported experiencing shame and embarrassment and stigma surrounding menstruation, resulting in absenteeism and emotional stress. UNESCO estimates that 1 in 10 girls in Sub-Saharan Africa misses school during menstruation. These realities call for broader psychological and social interventions. Now, the three dominant discourses around menstruation, stigma, commercialization, and medicalisation, all take a toll on mental health. Take advertising, for example, which puts pressure on menstruators to perform. You see girls leap around, jump joyfully in TV ads for pads, smiling, erasing the pain and fatigue, as if buying a product erases discomfort. I don't understand, it doesn't. These images do not mirror reality. Through the lens of medicalisation, menstruation becomes a list of disorders, surgeries, and hormonal changes, furthering shame, silence, and mental strain. And now the emotional burden. It doesn't end with the menstruator. Families are affected too, where primary caregivers include husbands, sons, brothers, uncles, and perhaps zaddies. That's why at the recent Big Ideas platform by Dr. Ezekwesili's School for Politics, Policies and Governance, SPPG, I advocated for open dialogue through media to help destigmatize menstruation. I also called for the inclusion of menstrual leave in labor laws, as seen in Zambia. This isn't a fight with men, it's a call for empathy. It's a call for visibility, dignity, and better mental health for all who menstruate.
I think that this is a very important topic and conversation that needs to be had, especially, so I'm not even going to look at the women now. I'm talking about the men, for example, because not too many men understand what goes on in the woman's body and mind. And menstrual health is something that's, like you rightly stated in your advocacy, that has to deal with empathy, mood swings, body pains, and all that. And even the stigmatization around it, that, oh, you know, don't touch me, don't do this. I mean, it happens with guys. Yeah. I have been there, that's why I'm saying this. So, like somebody is going through her menstrual cycle or menstrual flow, and then you are trying to avoid contact, avoid things, or tread with care and all that. That is in its form stigma.
It is.
But as you grow and you have access to more information, you then realize that this is normal, and then you should not stigmatize people based on this. And I encourage people now, my friends, to say, listen, for you to understand your woman better, have her period calendar also on your phone. Oh. This also helps you to understand when she's giving you attitude.
Because it comes with irritability, exactly. It comes with mood swings.
So you will know what she's going through, and how you can respond. And also find out the kind of things she wants to eat, like the diet. Yeah,
because there's the nutrition part of it.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you.
So if you have that information, and then you are able to act based on that information, you have a more peaceful home, and leave this idea of slice yam like this, and because maybe she's going through her cycle, and she's like, why are you talking to me like that? And you don't even understand why she's reacting that way. And then there's a full-blown war, and then divorce comes in the end. So please, men, let's try as much as possible to put ourselves in the shoes of our sisters, our women, and our loved ones, and so that we can be better informed and educated and act and do better.
Fantastic advocacy, Funke. It's one issue that we really need to talk about, because I mean, you didn't create yourself. It's part of God's grand design that these things do occur, and they have consequences. And I'm happy you raised the issue of Zambia that gives period leave,
menstrual leave,
because they understand what happens to the woman's body during this period. You can't function at your optimum level, so they've, in their wisdom, and it happens in a couple of Western countries too,
exactly,
granted workers that period to just take that period off and cool off and take care of your body. It's very important. Another thing you didn't mention is period poverty. So many people can't afford these pads, and that's why the stigmatization and the shaming comes in. And it's very, you also touched on the advertising, but I think the advertisers are just doing what advertisers do. I remember growing up when cigarette adverts were still allowed to air on television. You see somebody smoking and they graduated with a first class. What's the correlation with cigarettes and academic excellence? So when those women are jumping in the
lipping around gleefully, and you think, what's the problem?
It's just advertisers doing what they'll do. But I'll suggest they tone it down. But overall, it's a very important advocacy, and it's something we also need to teach kids growing up. Because me, I didn't know about periods until I was a teenager, in my late teens. I didn't know this thing was. I thought men and women, we have the same physiology.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think for me, you know, I grew up, you know, from humble backgrounds, and so it was always an issue, right? Whenever it was my monthly cycle, I love what you said about period poverty, because I think it's so important. You all don't understand the level of anxiety, right, and stress that comes with having your period, and you are here, for example, and you don't have a pad on you. You go to the restroom and there's no pads. And that in itself throws you into a panic attack. So even when you could handle this personally on your own, the fact that you're now in a public environment, right, really puts everything in another dimension. And we're talking about young schoolgirls in schools with no access to sanitary pads. That is something that I think we need to take as a public issue and not a woman's issue. Because when a child is in school and is suddenly worried about standing up from a seat to go to the physics lab, that is an education issue.
It is. It is.
You know, that is not a woman's issue. Or, you know, or when I'm at work and I can't go to the next meeting on time, that is a workplace productivity issue. And so I think it begs the question of where do we as a society stand when it comes to menstrual health and menstrual care? Where do we stand? Because if we stand with young girls, if we stand with women, then we need to make this simple facilities available. If it was men that were going on their periods, you better believe it, every single bathroom in Nigeria right now will have menstrual products. That is why we have toilet rolls.
We don't have toilet rolls.
I want to assume
but at some point there were condoms everywhere. If you look at the value of condom and the value of menstrual pads, you would think that both
would match the energy.
Yes. They stop the condoms, that's why our population.
But then, I mean, when you go to schools, you go to establishments like this, it is the expectation that we would have toilet papers. And so why, I mean, I want to bet you that if I go to the next door restroom right now, I probably won't find a tampon or a pad.
No, you won't, because it's not a policy yet. And it's different workplaces that it's their responsibility to say, okay, we're going to adopt menstrual leave in this workplace, or we're going to adopt the policy whereby you get into our restrooms and you find tampons there.
And so my point is that everyone should plan on menstrual health. If you're an employer, you need to stock tampons and pads in every restaurant. If you're a restaurant, people are coming in there to eat, to do business, you need to stock menstrual products.
And for schools, you need pad banks.
It's a no-brainer.
Yes, pad banks in schools.
I have been one of the people educated by your advocacy on this subject a lot. And I think that that's what we need to do a lot more. Talk about it, talk about the issues, period poverty, for instance, the economic realities of it. We must make it a human rights issue.
That's right.
Because if we don't connect it to basic human rights, then we will not get the economics right. Okay? It is a right of a woman to be able to have a pad bank, and it's not something that we should argue about. All right? It's something that should be there. I mean, I would go into my restroom at my workplace, and in the men's room, there's a condom pack there. And it's because, we've made the arguments around HIV/AIDS and all that stuff. But we need to also make that argument around sanitary
Menstrual
pads.
dignity, yes.
Yes. But it has an economic component to it. There are companies today who are manufacturing, who are in that space. It's not going to be a very easy conversation, but we need to have that conversation and we need to be serious about it. And the last bit I just want to say is we need to do a lot about the stigma. And part of the stigma is not being able to talk about it.
There's a lot of silence.
There's a lot of silence.
Yes.
And I want to talk about the religious part of it. We come from a place where, when you read some verses of scripture, for instance, that connects period to being unclean.
That's dirty.
As a woman being unclean. And those are the things that are somehow taught in our religious centers.
Yes.
A woman, a girl, a teenager tends to feel that she's not worthy. And we know better now that whether you are, on a period or not period, doesn't mean that you're not worthy or you are unclean or whatever. But that's what religion has injected into the minds of people. And so I want to urge our religious leaders. I don't know where you are. You might be a pastor, you might be an imam, you might be or whatever. We need to be very intentional and deliberate about teaching people not to think of a woman on her period as being unclean.
Where our priorities don't support or reflect the lived experience of a portion of society. Isn't this what we call marginalization?
You have a point there, Funke. Let's not wait until the burden bearers can no longer bear the burden to find out what happens next.